Supposed to be there for their kid, you know, provide food, shelter, joy, and going in, becoming a parent for her, I had no clue how to provide that.
Cómo pensar educarla, ajá, cómo educar a un hijo y porque pues nosotros nunca, es la primera vez que íbamos a ser padres.
What I think parents should know about home visiting is that you can learn a lot of new things and tips and tricks, how to take care of the baby and what to do, and if you're, stuck in a routine and everything being monotonous, like they give you new resources and new tools how to handle parenthood.
It was nice to have them kind of guiding me, even though I was not a first-time mom. I felt like a first-time mom.
It totally blew my mind over time. So much information that I had no idea about. She was straightforward when, teaching me this stuff and answered any of my questions. Just a really positive experience.
What I think that parents could benefit with the program is just having someone here for you, especially for first-time parents. It can be very isolating and it can be very lonely, and having the home visitor changes that, and it feels very good.
For me, having a home visitor is like having a second mom there.
A lot has changed. I'm definitely more knowledgeable taking care of her, and I know that anytime I need advice or help from somebody, I can just call her.
It's just that little positive nudge to, hey, I'm noticing something, let's find a way how to change it. And she's like, you know what, Amanda, let's pick you up, dust you off, and let's go over to, see about either getting your driver's license or seeing about, going to college, see if we can start something for you.
Council members, order.
It's totally worth it.
We have roll call.
Yes, good afternoon. And we are still missing our clerk, and so I will be calling the roll today and the votes. Director John Haschak.
Here.
Is here in Ukiah. Director Mike Carter.
Here.
Also here in Ukiah. Director Josefina Duenas is here in Ukiah. Director Bernie Norvell
Here.
is in Fort Bragg. Director Greta Connie
Here.
is present in Ukiah. Director Jeff Hansen
Here.
in Point Arena, thank you. Director Tasha Alstrand.
Here.
And she's calling from Eureka. And Chair Dan Jurdy
Here in Fort Bragg.
from Fort Bragg. Thank you very much.
Just to clarify, we have no issues involving AB 240.
We actually do. We actually have received one request under AB 2449. So we have received a request. Actually, Tasha Alstrand has requested to participate under the provisions of AB 2449, which allows a member of a legislative body to participate remotely with just cause if certain requirements are met. Those requirements have been met, and so it's that the person participate both visually and via audio. Those requirements have been met. A quorum has to be present physically in one location. We do have a quorum present physically here in Ukiah, and the board can make a finding that the the reason for participating remotely falls under one of the just cause provisions. And Tasha, we received the request from Tasha this morning, and she is requesting that be made based on an unexpected need for child care. So that is the request that is before us. And in order for her to participate, the board needs to approve that request.
I'll move that we approve the request. I will second.
I think it was Bernie.
Okay, thanks. Do we have any public comment?
None here in chambers.
We have roll call.
Yes, Director Haschak,
Yes.
Director Carter,
Yes.
Director Duenas, Director Norvell,
Yes.
Director Connie.
Yes.
Any feedback? Director Hansen.
Yes.
Does Director Alstrand vote? I'm not.
I don't think
I
on
don't
this
think
one.
Director
We
Alstrand
haven't.
would vote, and Chair Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, now we're on to election of officers.
Okay, I will take that one. So this is our annual election of the chair and the vice chair. And you have my staff report. We've been following Robert's Rules of Order. And if it's all right, I'll go ahead and proceed with that process. So I will ask for nominations and for each office, and then ask for a motion. I'm still hearing feedback. I hope it's not from me. Okay. All right, so are there any nominations for the office of chair?
I would like to nominate Dan Jurdy for the chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for the chair? Any other nominations? Hearing none. Can we consider that a motion then, Director Carter?
Yes, I would move that Dan Jurdy be elected as chair.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Director Haschak. And I guess, I have to call that roll. It's a teleconference meeting. I will have to call every vote. Director Haschak,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Duenas,
Yes.
Norvell,
Yes.
Connie,
Yes.
Hansen,
Yes.
and Chair Jurdy.
Yes.
And congratulations, you're re-elected chair. Motion has carried. All right, and so now, are there any nominations for the office of vice chair?
I would like to nominate Director Haschak.
All right,
I second.
okay. So are there any other nominations for vice chair? Going once, going twice? Hearing no other nominations for vice chair, can we consider that a motion then? And that was Carter and Duenas. All right, that's a convenient way to do it. I'll now call the roll. Director Haschak,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Duenas,
Yes.
Norvell,
Yes.
Connie, Hansen,
Yes.
and Dan Jurdy.
Yes.
All right, congratulations. Director Haschak has been re-elected vice chair. So now we can,
Thanks.
that's all we have to do for that item, so we can move on to the next. And
Okay, well, that
Chair
brings us-
Jurdy now presides over the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
So we're going to convene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency and immediately recess and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. Do we have any public comments on the consent calendar? Not hearing any. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second. Let's check.
Thank you. Shall I call the roll now? All right, so on the consent calendar, Director Haschak,
Yes.
Director Carter,
Yes.
Director Duenas,
Yes.
Director Norvell,
Yes.
Director Connie,
Yes.
Director Hansen,
Yes.
Director Alstrand,
Yes.
and Chair Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you, the motion carries.
Okay, that takes us to public expression on items not on today's agenda. Do we have public comments on anything that's not on today's agenda?
Yes, we do have someone present here in the chambers. Can you come up to the podium to make your comments, please?
Good afternoon. I'm Gizmo. And I brought a public comment, real simple one. I've been concerned literally since 2004, actually even before that. And I'd like to speak to the North State Street on-ramp, off-ramp issue. It's been a number of years since I first called Phil Frisbee from District 1, who is the head supervisor, about keeping the trees pruned at that on-ramp so that folks can see us entering the freeway, and we don't keep crashing into that K-rail there. Since that time, the North State Street on-ramp has had some improvements. They put up a sign to warn people in the slow lane to move over to the fast lane, but inadvertently, when I do that, it creates more of an issue, because then people see me moving into their way and they jump over into the slow lane, and I've actually created 2 accidents accidentally from people doing that and then crashing into the K-rail. So this year my insurance went up 21%, and I call my insurance company and they say, yeah, people are crashing all the time. And so my concern is that since 2004, which would be a 20-year period, that this on-ramp, off-ramp has not been dealt with. And so what I end up paying extra money through my insurance, the insurance company makes no contact with the CHP to say, hey, this on-ramp is an issue. Okay, so we have no enforcement, and I'm paying the bill for it. Not only am I paying, but every time a fire department goes out, we all pay. Every time I wait in traffic for this to be fixed, we're all paying. The person goes to the hospital, we're paying. So we're paying, yet there seems to be nothing being done with something that should have been fixed years ago. Now, I've been told that the reason why it hasn't been dealt with is because of the space issue with the hotel on the north end of the overpass, and that they would have to spend a lot of money to enlarge the bridge, to add an extra lane to the bridge to create a safer on-ramp. And so I came up with a proposal myself to create a new off-ramp that accesses Ford Road, because there's 2 overpasses there. There's actually, we spent $8 million, I think, on the road. We matched that $8 million, which turned out to be $21 million to build a road next to Big Daddy's that nobody uses. So we really, if we can work to get this on-ramp, off-ramp fixed, if they need a proposal at Caltrans, if MCOG needs to see what I've done, I'm willing to do this, but I can't keep wondering if this is going to continue to be potential hazard and possibly dangerous, deadly hazard in the near future. I'd like to see some movement on this, over 20-year issue. Thank you. Are any questions?
Yep. Under public expression, board members aren't really allowed to ask questions other than clarifying questions, so it can't be a discussion item. But I'll plan on following up with Caltrans on your comment to make sure that the comments make it to the right people.
And if I can get on the agenda to have more time, I will. And to allow the board to ask me questions, if that's the case, then I will get on the
I'll follow up with board members to see if they would like this agendized at a future meeting.
Thank you. And I can still reserve a comment for item 14.
Yes, this is just for items that are not on the agenda.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments on non-agenda items? Not hearing any, I think that takes us to our public hearing item, which is number 12.
Yes, I'll take that. Janet Orth, Deputy Director and CFO. So the purpose of this annual public hearing is that the Transportation Development Act requires that before any local transportation funds are allocated for streets and roads purposes, unallocated at fiscal year end, a process is conducted to identify any unmet transit needs that might be found reasonable to meet for funding. And this procedure has been followed annually by AMCOG. You have my written staff report there. And I'd first like to give or to report a finding of proper notice. In your packet, you have proofs of publication. This notice of public hearing was published in the Willits News on January 3rd. And by the way, that's a 30-day public notice, legal notice. And that was to be for our February 5th meeting, but since our meeting was adjourned due to the storm conditions, we weren't able to have that meeting, and so the business was continued to today's meeting. We did not reissue a legal notice. It's our understanding that we didn't need to if that item was continued, and I posted that continuance on our website. And so we did that notice, as I said, Willits News on January 3rd, the Ukiah Daily Journal on January 4th, Fort Bragg Advocate News on January 4th, and the Independent Coast Observer on January 5th. And my apologies, I'm missing that proof of publication for the Independent Coast Observer. We're missing our assistant, and I just haven't had the time to follow up and get a copy, but we did order that to be printed. Only one notice of general circulation is required, so that's covered by the Ukiah Daily Journal. So this has been more than met. And we also posted the notice on our website and emailed to our subscriber list and other interested parties. So and I did resend those emails to the subscribers ahead of today's meeting. And so we think that these actions more than meet the requirement. Now, I'm not sure if you need to actually take an action and a motion and a vote. We've done that in the past. It may not be necessary. I notice the Board of Supervisors doesn't do that, but however you'd like to do that. You can accept my report or take an action and vote on it. Anybody have too much information? If you like, you can just accept my report, and if, without any objections, that would be finding a proper notice. Okay, hearing no objections to that finding? Okay. So at this point, the chair would open the hearing. I'd like to give my report, my staff report, in the public hearing because I do have testimony to report. Shall we open that now? He's on, our chairman's on mute.
It seems like this would be a good time to open the public hearing at 1:49.
Thank you very much. All right, first I'd like to give my staff report. You have there in your packet a list of unmet needs from the MCOG Social Services Transportation Advisory Council. And they had their annual workshop on November 29th and came up with this list of 7 needs. And those, I'll just describe the general issues that came up without reading that. You have it in your packet. But the issues raised included micro-transit mobility solutions for remote inland areas and also coastal areas. They brought up assisted services, non-emergency medical transportation, restoration of pandemic-related service suspensions, and a new one, a local and visitor serving route for economic development over in Fort Bragg. So these are in no particular order. You have that list. The SSTAC also did mention 2 other recommendations they have that are not related to transit service per se. They're not unmet needs, but they also recommend developing the Ukiah Transit Center for multimodal connections and coordinated services. And also to upgrade and modernize the MTA's administration facility. So that is the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council, the SSTAC. And also we had some written testimony received, and that is also in your packet. We had an email that came from the December 7th town hall that Caltrans held on their State Route 222 corridor plan. That's over in Talmadge. And this was from a commuter that works at the Mendocino County Office of Education, requesting expanded transit service along that corridor of Route 222, which is Talmadge Road. So you have that. And also we received a written letter from, Laurette Cohen. And she's been a dial-a-ride passenger since 1978. I thought that was worth mentioning. The gist of hers, you have the letter, but her comments are that the dial-a-ride service appears to be understaffed with drivers, and she recommends a number of optimal number of drivers to have available for the dial-a-ride service. And on a positive note, she says that the dial-a-ride, the MTA dial-a-ride, is a very safe method of transportation, and all of their drivers are courteous and professional. Which is nice to hear, isn't it? Yes, so that is all I have. Is there anybody else in the room? We can hear further testimony if there is any.
Well, I can see the house built in 1937.
Oh, I'm sorry, am I missing a? Oh, there's a hand up there. Okay. We have a Valerie Johnson online. Wait a moment. And does someone need to unmute? Or can she do that herself?
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I've actually heard one of my concerns mentioned earlier, and that is the, I think you referred to it as the Talmadge corridor. We could definitely use transportation out here. It's very limiting for people without cars. And, we certainly have enough destinations that would make it a reasonable thing to,
Valerie?
to offer. Yeah.
Could you stop for a sec? We've got a lot of feedback here.
It's hard to understand.
We're trying to get it worked out.
Yeah, Valerie, if you have two audio sources, I think one is picking up the other.
Is that any better? I'm very sorry. I was having a terrible time. I was having a terrible time accessing the meeting, and my fallback was just to speak on my telephone, on my cell phone, and I was afraid to turn it off for fear that I would lose you all.
Valerie, it sounds good now.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Should I reiterate or just go from there?
Yes, start over again, please.
Okay, I was talking about the Talmadge corridor, and my suggestion is also to provide some sort of public transportation. I wasn't aware that we still had dial-a-ride available. I looked on the website, and I couldn't see anything that said anything in reference to them back to September of 2017 or something. But having some sort of small jitney bus service would be great. We have the MCOE, we have City 10,000 Buddhas, and those are definitely destinations that a number of people use. So that plus the fact that we have reasonably priced rentals in Talmadge, and folks who use those rentals and don't have a car. walk to town and walk back, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but you know, on a day like this, it'd be nice to have public transportation. So that would be high on my list. And the other thing I'd like to suggest is the bus service that we do have. Now, this is to the best of my knowledge. It does not run in the evening hours, and there are, you know, a number of activities that people without vehicles would like to access after 6 o'clock, but they're unable to do that for a reasonable price. So an extension of hours to maybe 10 o'clock at night would be appreciated, I believe. Thank you.
Valerie, were you talking about Ukiah service?
I think all service
Or
would be
just
nice,
all
but I think Ukiah is probably the main
Right.
the main reason. For instance, if you lived in Talmadge and you wanted to go to a movie at night, it would be nice if you could take a bus in and take a bus back. However, that's a much smaller population than Ukiah, so even if it was just Ukiah, it would be appreciated.
Thank you. See any others? Any other public testimony? Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Gizmo again. It seems to me that as the Great Red Trail, the rail trails, I'm not sure, stops in Sonoma County or ends up with the bus service at the end of Sonoma County, it might be a good idea to think of a way to make sure that folks can get from there to Hopland in between the section of the trail that won't be working, and that might be like a weekend bus that could carry electric bikes and bikes folks to our county. So I was thinking it would be a good idea to make sure that folks can get from Sonoma County and maybe just a weekend shuttle, and then of course from Road Valley to Willits would be the next short little jump on the Great Redwood Trail while the sections are being constructed. Thank you.
Okay. Duly noted. Is there anyone else?
Could I have a second bite of the apple?
Of course.
When he said Hopland, it occurred to me that I didn't mention Hopland, which is, I think, another part of our corridor that isn't served. I understand that the senior center has recently put one Hopland trip on their schedule, once a week, which is great. I mean, much appreciated. But, I have friends who have an elderly mom who would love to go to the senior center. And, a regular bus once a day would be really nice. Thank you. That was all.
Okay. We're adding to our list everything we're hearing today. So if that's all, the testimony, we can close the testimony. Okay.
If that's the last of the public comment, we'll close the public hearing at 1:59. And would a board member like to make a motion to the effect that the testimony here includes unmet transit needs that appear to qualify under MPOG's adopted definitions, and those needs are directed to the Mendocino Transit Authority for analysis and further review and recommendation by the Transit Productivity Committee and Social Services Transportation Advisory Council.
So moved.
Is that Norvell?
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. That is the staff recommendation, and that will include all the testimony we heard today and the SSTAC list and the letters that were in your packet. So I will go ahead and call the roll for that motion now. Director Haschak?
Yes.
Director Carter?
Yes.
Director Duenas?
Yes.
Director Norvell?
Yes.
Director Connie?
Yes.
Director Hansen?
Yes.
Director Alstrand?
Yes.
And Chair Judy.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everyone.
That should take us to the Gualala Downtown Streetscape project update.
Okay. So the Gualala Downtown Streetscape Project, as I think all of our board members are aware, is a project funded through MCOG funds as well as the competitively awarded Active Transportation Program funds. It will provide bicycle and pedestrian facilities through downtown Gualala, where none currently exist. And here to give us a brief project update now that they are in the design phase is project manager Katie Everett. And I will hand it over to Katie.
Hello, everyone. Nafili, do you have the ability to share that presentation, or would you like me to do that?
Oh, if you are able to do it, that would be great. I do not have it handy.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm Katie Everett. I am the Caltrans project manager for this project. Are you seeing my presentation?
Yes.
And today we're going to talk about the Gualala Downtown Enhancement Project. This was a brief project presentation put together just to update on the project status. The purpose and need of the project is shown here. The purpose of the project is to improve traffic flow and create safe, comfortable facilities for pedestrians and bicycle travel through downtown Gualala. The project is also intended to improve Gualala's visual character by incorporating landscape hardscape features into the project. The project was based on the need to reduce conflicts between motorized and non-motorized users, and also the facility was being the conflicts were worsened by the on-street parking and minimal access control. And so as we've worked through the environmental document, we have proposed the following engineering features, which include 2,770 linear feet of sidewalk, reconstructed sidewalk, class 2 bike lanes, pedestrian crosswalks, curb ramps, reconstructed curb ramps, updated crosswalks, pedestrian refuges, radar feedback signs, and also pedestrian activated flashing beacons. To go over the project schedule, in 2023, the project approval and final environmental document was completed, which then kicked off our design and acquisition period. Right now in 2024, the team is beginning right-of-way acquisitions, and the design team continues to develop the project. We look to try to start the permit submittals in late 2024. In 2025, we will hit our ready to list milestone, which will put the project out to bid. And in 2026, we hope to begin construction on the project. At this time, the project team is continuing to work through project conflicts to reach that 2025 ready to list deadline. And that is a brief explanation of where we are in the project, and I am happy to take questions if there are any.
Are there board member questions? We do have, we've got public comment, I think, in the board chambers, as well as we did receive one online as well, and it looks like there are hands up in the Zoom. But do we have board comments before we take the public comments? Oh, okay. We can go to public comment then. Why don't we start with public comment here in the chambers?
Can you clarify what an upgraded crosswalk is?
The upgraded crosswalks are to update any crosswalks up to ADA standards.
I see. Does that include creating a separate space, a 45-degree angle at each end of the crosswalk, or are they still 90 degrees to the sidewalk? Are they still?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you repeat that?
Yes. Does this include a 45-degree angle at the before the crosswalk reaches the sidewalk, as to allow people who are turning right a faster way to turn right? What is an upgraded? I guess my vision is a crosswalk goes straight across to either side. Does an upgraded crosswalk include this extra little right-hand space? And what is an upgraded crosswalk?
I can provide the draft plans, which are part of the project report, to you for further illustration of what is proposed. Typically, crosswalks are presented perpendicular to the path of travel.
Typically. Recently, I've just seen a lot of them turn at this 45-degree angle, which I think is a lot harder for pedestrians to negotiate. And that's why I was wondering what an upgraded crosswalk meant.
Yeah, I'll just comment from what I have seen. I don't believe any of them have a 45-degree angle. I think they're directly across. And they also will be, their visibility, so they'll be more highly visible crosswalks. So that's included in the upgrade as well.
And some in Sonoma County actually have blinking lights that go in them. Is that an upgraded crosswalk?
So I believe that there are rapid flashing beacons included. They're not like in the ground, but on the sides.
I just was wondering what an upgraded. Thank you.
Okay, it doesn't look like there are any other public comments here in chambers. Let me go ahead and read the comment that we received online. I will read into the record, and then we'll go to members of the public participating remotely. So this was a comment received from Tom Murphy. His comment says, representing the 1,700 plus supporters of Save Gualala, I am happy to voice our full endorsement for the Gualala Downtown Enhancement Project as formally approved by Caltrans in late 2023. As I've stated repeatedly in the past to MCOG, this plan provides much needed safety, aesthetic, and environmental improvements. While there will always be a few residents in any plan with reservations, this project has been the focus of more than a quarter century in planning and is eagerly awaited by the vast majority of Gualala area residents. The improvements in the current plan meet all the legal requirements of the Gualala Town Plan, Local Coastal Plan, and Mendocino County Plan. We are grateful to all MCOG members, the Gualala MAC, Ms. Barrett, Ms. Everett, and former project director Karen Coonrod for their good work in moving this forward during the past year. We ask that you continue to support this project vigorously through completion, now scheduled for 2026. Thank you. And that's all we received prior to the meeting. And now it looks like I see Don Hess has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. This is Don Hess from Gualala. In May of last year, Caltrans held a town hall in Gualala to present their latest plan for the streetscape. During this gathering, I asked whether or not Caltrans was going to include mitigation efforts to reduce or eliminate the flow into the river estuary of the car tire residue 6 ppd quinone this would happen during storm runoff events. This chemical is known to be deadly to certain salmonids, such as coho salmon, and is currently under study by the Environmental Protection Agency. Caltrans rep at the time, Karen Conroe, responded, and I quote, "There are limited areas within the project footprint to install treatment," unquote. And then she added, and I quote again, "We have to come up with a solution, and it is a requirement," unquote. So In the final design phase to come, will Caltrans follow through and incorporate adequate treatment or filtering solutions to protect salmonids? This is important because the Redwood Coast Land Conservancy Group, as part of the Mill Bend project in Gualala, is actively working to restore salmonid habitat in the river. But the continued presence of 6-ppd quinone may result in much of their efforts being in vain. Thank you for taking my question.
With our project, we hope to complete final design, and we will be submitting for permits that are necessary for the construction of the project later this year, if not in 2025. We look to achieve compliance through all required permits.
All right, thank you, Katie. I'm not seeing any other public comments online and no others here in the chambers.
Okay, well, thanks for the update.
Oh, I'm sorry, it does look like we just got one hand up in Zoom. From Dave Schbach.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Members of the board, this is Dave Schbach from Gualala. I want to echo our previous GMAC colleague Tom Murphy's comments, encouraging continued progress on this important project. And very importantly, to extend my compliments to the project team at Caltrans. District administration has been consistently supportive, to Ms. Barrett's team at MCOG that have been very, very helpful throughout the years, particularly advancing the ATP grant application, and to members of this board and agencies within MCOG that have been consistent in supporting this important improvement at the southern gateway of Mendocino County over the many years of planning. We look forward to implementation. We are available at GMAC and in the South Coast community to continue our support for this project. And again, thank you for hosting this update this afternoon.
Okay, now I think that was the end of our public comment.
Okay, great, well, thanks, and hope the best for the project. I guess that takes us to the report and update on the RuralREN.
All right. So this is an item that has been discussed at the ad hoc for this purpose, as well as at the executive committee. And it is on the agenda today for approval of the ad hoc's recommendation. So in February of 2022, the MCOG board approved a memorandum of understanding with the Redwood Coast Energy Authority to participate in the newly formed Rural Regional Energy Network, or RuralREN, which was something that at that point in time had already been in development for a couple years. We were somewhat late joining this group, so at that point in time, they did give us the opportunity to participate, but as sort of subcontractors to our CEA. Other parties that are in this parties or counties that are being served by the RuralREN are, so RCEA represents the Humboldt County area. There's the Sierra Business Council, which is the Northern Sierra counties, San Luis Obispo County, Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, Kern, Ventura Regional Energy Alliance, High Sierra Energy Foundation, and the San Joaquin Valley Clean Energy Organization. And the purpose of RENs, including this REN, is to provide energy efficiency programs to ratepayers of the investor-owned utilities that are in hard-to-reach areas or communities that are hard to reach or harder to serve. So the business plan for the RuralREN was submitted in spring of 2022 for approval by the California Public Utilities Commission. It was bundled with a number of other items for consideration by the CPUC and ultimately approved in June of 2023. So following approval by the CPUC, the RuralREN partners, which again does not include MCOG because we were a sub-partner essentially of RCEA, but the partners and leadership team started working out the details of implementation and administration. We were part of those efforts, but we were not part of the leadership team. Unfortunately, the discussions over administration led to some disagreements among partners about the different roles that were played in the group. RCEA was designated as the portfolio administrator, and there was some issues regarding the level of authority that RCEA had versus that of the leadership team as a whole. So disagreements led to a review of RCEA and ultimately led to the leadership team holding an impromptu vote to replace RCEA as the portfolio administrator and replace them with the County of San Luis Obispo. Things from there kind of devolved, I would say. Some efforts were made by various involved parties to propose facilitators or mediators, but none of those efforts actually moved forward. And ultimately in December, we received notification that a petition had been filed by RCEA with the Public Utilities Commission to reduce the area covered by the RuralREN to include only Humboldt, Mendocino, Lake, and the Northern Sierra region. So that petition for modification, or PFM, sort of kicked off a series of other motions that have been filed subsequently, as well as responses to each of those motions. So that was the first. It was followed then by a petition for modification that was filed by the Southern REN partners. And that petition for modification proposed to keep the full RuralREN intact, but replace the portfolio administrator. A third petition for modification was also filed by the Public Advocate's Office to essentially dissolve the RuralREN because they had concerns about the REN's ability to move forward as a whole, and under the proposal submitted by RCEA to reduce the size, they believed that that was too much of a change from what was originally approved to be done through the PFM process. So there have, like I said, there have been a number of responses to each of these, including by the Public Advocate's Office. There have also been responses submitted from 3C REN, which is the Central Coast REN, and Bay REN, which is the Bay Area REN. Their responses have just been seeking clarification and explaining what they believe to be the CPUC's role in REN governance, whether it is the portfolio administrator having ultimate authority, or the portfolio administrator essentially being the leadership team, and the single agency that is doing the administration being the internal administrator. So that is sort of where things stand. The other party that is included, that is currently a full partner in the RuralREN, that was also included in the proposed reduced RuralREN, is Sierra Business Council. They have decided to take a neutral position, and they have submitted formal comments to that effect. They believe that they can deliver energy efficiency programs under either REN. And this was the question that was presented to the ad hoc committee. Should MCOG take a position in favor of one PFM or another, or should MCOG remain a neutral party, and should MCOG submit submit a motion for party status to formally submit what is essentially legal comments on these various motions. The ad hoc committee recommended that MCOG maintain a rural position on all of these, that the priority is to deliver these programs to ratepayers in the region, and that can be done under either the reduced RuralREN or under the full RuralREN. The executive committee also discussed this and concurred with the ad hoc committee's recommendation. Included in my staff report, if you want a little light reading, are the petitions and the exhibits. There are also a number of things that are available through the CPUC website, the responses to all of these things. But that is the summary today. I am happy to answer any questions. I will say it's been an interesting process to watch, and there are certainly pros and cons to either of these scenarios. Of course, if the public advocate's PFM is approved, then we're all members, not just MCOG, but all members of the REN are sort of starting from scratch. So we don't know what that might look like for MCOG, but we believe that there would still be a path forward to be part of a RuralREN. It just might be a longer path in that event. So that is my staff report, and I'm happy to answer questions. And if there are no questions, then there could be a motion to approve the ad hoc committee's recommendation.
I will so move with the comment that it's disappointing that this is slowing the process down, but I do appreciate the position to stay neutral. There's no reason at this point, I think, to go one way or the other. Both would work.
I will second the motion.
For clarification, do we have any public comment on this item?
Sorry, good idea, yes. There is no public comment here in chambers, and I'm not seeing any on Zoom.
Okay, we have a roll call.
Yes, Director Housecheck,
Yes.
Director Carter,
Yes.
Director Duenas, Director Norvell, Director Norville in Fort Bragg. I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Thank you. And Director Connie?
Yes.
Director Hansen?
Yes.
Director Alstrand?
Yes.
And Chair Judy?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to the annual committee appointments. We have the executive committee, we have the transit productivity committee, SSTAC, I'm sorry, the California Association of Council of Governments, and we also have some ad hoc committees dealing with Below 162, multimodal transportation, and the REN, climate committee. So for the executive committee, the chair and the vice chair automatically sit on the executive committee, and then we have a third member of the board that serves on the executive committee. And Director Norvell's been serving this last year.
Correct.
Would you like to serve again?
I would. Thank you.
So
We could just take volunteers and do this in one motion if that's convenient.
sure.
Were there any questions about the committee post, the work? Or does anyone want to just continue their seat?
You're talking just about the executive committee at this point, or all of them?
Any of them? Yeah.
I just say that with the CalCog, I'm the delegate, and I've been it for the last couple of years. And if anyone wants to take over that, I'm willing to give it up and pass it on. The CalCog, it's interesting to hear their discussions. It's just that a lot of it has to do with the big transit and transportation, the urban centers. And so I feel like small fish in a in a big pond. But
And
we
I
do
would
need
say that
representation there.
I agree, and I think it is a good source of information to get an overview of how the funding works throughout the system. And Bill Higgins, who's the director, previously was a significant figure in the League of California Cities, and he's also just a pretty entertaining person. So, it's not the driest committee assignment out there.
Yeah, that's true.
I will also add that I understand feeling like the small fish, I guess, in the room with all of the urban focused discussion, but it's important to be part of that conversation and to make sure that we have that rural voice represented.
Right. And Janet Orth gave a great presentation along those lines at the last CalCog meeting. And really making the point that, we rural counties and, COGs have much different issues than the big ones, and we do need special attention.
Thank you, appreciate that.
With that said, I'll continue on if no one wants to take it on.
Have they been doing the board meetings? I think they're quarterly online mostly, or do you have to go?
Yeah, those
somewhere?
are online, so
Yeah.
do it from the comfort of your office or home.
Right, and then, once or twice a year, they have an in-person, conference. So then they have the board meeting there, but have they allowed callers to join that in a hybrid meeting, or? You were at the last one in person, I believe.
Yeah, I was there. I don't know if they had it hybrid at the conference.
Yeah, I think only the actual board meeting portion is
just the portion
available in hybrid format.
Doing business, not the rest of the forum. Yeah. Were there any other questions about the committees? We have the Transit Committee, that's coming up in April. We have a lot of business at that meeting usually. We present, you'll look at the unmet transit needs from today and receive analysis on that list of needs from Mendocino Transit Authority, and look at their annual claim for funds, and look at performance data and do a review of that, and I prepare analysis on that. So really only meet once, maybe twice at most.
I will continue with the Transit Productivity Committee and also the Covelo SR 162 corridor.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Question for Nabili. We have an ad hoc on the RuralREN, and I think we had an update that went to both that ad hoc and then maybe to the executive committee. Just looking to make sure we're not duplicating things. Do you foresee if there's a future update that it would go to the ad hoc and then also the executive committee, or just the ad hoc?
I think that if we're having, so the reason that one was kind of doubled up was because of when it happened to fall in regards to board meetings. That came up in December after we had our December board meeting, and then of course we don't have a January board meeting, and so that was why we got the ad hoc committee to consider that right away. And then had intended to take that to the MCOG board in February. However, the February board meeting ended up being adjourned to March due to the storm and the problems that caused. So that was why it also then went to the executive committee meeting, because that came up then before it was actually able to be considered by the board. So just in case, because it was somewhat timely, in case there seemed to be interest in filing motion for party status, that was why we wanted to get executive committee weigh in addition to ad hoc committee. it was probably overkill, but just because we didn't have those board meetings, that was why we did that.
Okay, so it sounds like we still have good value in having the ad hoc for another year.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So I'm obviously interested in it. Director Hashak, are you interested in continuing on that ad hoc?
Yes.
And Director Hansen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that, maybe we could go ahead with the appointments.
That's with everyone continuing in their present seat, correct?
Chair Dirty,
Okay.
I just have a
Go ahead.
question for Nafili about the Covelo State Route 162 corridor multi-purpose trail project ad hoc. Do you see that as needing more ad hoc work in the near future? I just don't want to keep an ad hoc going just for the sake of keeping it going.
Well, things have been, knock on wood, things have been going fairly smoothly recently with that project. You know, we had that sort of, you know, early on in project development. It was particularly useful when we had, you know, we had a lot of issues coming up at that point in time. It's probably not as critical at this point, and I suppose it could be reformed if we needed it. But we are not. The project is not. Oops. Project is not complete yet, so we could keep it going until project completion. Construction is scheduled to be complete this year. There will be remaining mitigation monitoring post-construction, but we could maybe plan on disbanding that at the end of construction.
Okay, that'd be fine with me.
Okay.
Ready for a roll call? Oh, we need a motion, don't we still?
Oh, I think.
Why don't we do one motion for the whole slate that's been discussed? Unless there's something else.
Well, I'll move to approve the appointments to the Executive Committee, the Transit Productivity Committee, CalCog, and the Ad Hoc Committee.
I will second.
All right, any more discussion? Okay, Director Housecheck?
Yes.
Director Carter?
Yes.
Director Duenas?
Yes.
Director Norvell?
Yes.
Director Connie?
Yes.
Director Hansen?
Yes.
Director Alstrand?
Yes.
And Chair Jurdy.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously. Everyone is reappointed.
Okay, that takes us to the executive committee recommendations for the Fourth Amendment to the RTPA budget.
Okay, that one's mine as well. So in January, we had a meeting with Chair Jurdy, Sarah Piercy, acting county auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, and Mendocino Transit Authority staff, and our administrative staff, myself and Ms. Barrett here. That was a meeting requested by our chair to talk about how the estimate is prepared and how best to address or to avoid budget shortfalls in the future. So you have my written staff report here. We learned a lot from that meeting, and on that same day she provided a revised estimate for this current year we're in right now, 2023-24 fiscal year, of the local transportation fund revenue, and she is projecting another shortfall of $658,530. You have that letter in your packet here with a revised estimate of a little over 4.2 million. It was at 4.9 million. So she is suggesting reporting quarterly on that estimate so that we can see better what's coming. didn't have a lot of timely information about actual revenues. So that is the estimate, and so the committee met to review that and look at how we can accommodate this projected shortfall. And you see in your packet, there's this, the one-page budget summary. You know, you do have a whole package with a budget at the end of the year, but we're just showing you this one summary page right now, and highlighted is the committee recommendation. Staff had prepared several options for that, and the committee went with staff's recommended option A, and that's what we're showing you here. That's how I prepared this resolution to amend the allocations. The other options, the other two, were option B to cut allocations to some degree for MTA. Nobody liked that one. And the last one was no action or status quo, which would just follow adopted policy, and that actually was not as good as what we're proposing here. So what option A does is it recalculates the reserve fund, which was set at 15% this year. It recalculates the 15% on the new estimate. So that brings down the reserve fund from $735,000 down to $637,000. Also, I took the audited, the most recent audit of the fund balance in the reserve, and also added the interest earnings of the past 2 quarters up through the end of December. And that gave us a figure of what we have in reserve is $579,752. So we still need some money to fill up that reserve to this new 15% to get to $637,000. So that's easier to get to than the original number. So the other part was to take away the 2% bike and pedestrian allocation, which is an optional amount, optional allocation. And so that gave us another, I think it was 86,000 or so. And the final step is that the shortfall would be intended to be covered by the reserve fund. So the only real cut, the only cut to allocations is the bike and pedestrian fund. And that's something that goes into MCOG's cash account until we solicit projects, usually from the Technical Advisory Committee, and then usually accumulate 2 years worth of that money and then award it to 1 or more projects. So that seemed to be, everyone agreed, the least painful way to make this amendment for this current fiscal year. Are there any questions about that? Any discussion? We have our executive committee members present. If you'd like to say anything about that.
Well, I'll just add that, you know, the cuts are hard to make, but I think going from the 15% down to the 10% for the reserve is prudent and.
Director Hastek, I think you're thinking ahead to the new budget, and I'll report on that at the end here. This item is just for the current year shortfall.
Oh,
and
okay.
then we had 2 executive committee meetings this month, yeah. So it's easy to mix those up. So the committee met, when did I say you met? February 13th, I think it was. There it is, yeah. And then we met again on February 29th to look at the new budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Okay,
and I'll report on that later, okay? All right. Anything else on the amendment? Any questions or? Okay, well, if there's not, then we need a motion to, what is the motion? To approve this resolution that I put in your packet here.
I will so move.
All right. Thank
Second.
you. And that was a second from Director Hashtag. Did I hear? Thank you.
Do we have any public comment on this action?
The action is to adopt resolution number M 2024-01. That's the first resolution of this calendar year, revising the allocation of local transportation funds to MCOG's fiscal year 2023-24 governmental programs. That's the bike and ped, as a fourth budget amendment, and authorize the executive director to issue revised allocation instructions to the acting county auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector.
I'm not seeing any public comment online. Is there any public comment in chambers? No. Okay, no public comment.
Okay, so that's the motion on the table. Are we ready for a roll call? Okay, Director Hashtag.
Yes.
Director Carter.
Yes.
Director Duenas.
Yes.
Director Norvell.
Yes.
Director Connie.
Yes.
Director Hansen.
Yes.
Director Alstrand.
Yes.
And Chair Jurdy.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Right, thanks. We're going to recess as the Policy Advisory Committee, reconvene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, and do we have a motion to ratify the actions of the Policy Advisory Committee?
So moved.
I will second.
Okay, quick roll call on that. Hashtag.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Duenas. Norvell.
Yes.
Connie.
Yes.
Hansen.
Yes.
And Jurdy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, but take this to informational reports. Is there an update or report from District 1?
Yeah, hi, I have a few updates. I wanted to just go over some new staff that we have in District 1. We have a new District Native American liaison, Jerome Washington. He's working on the Tribal Transportation Summit. There will be a summit in Ukiah, and it's currently scheduled for April 30th. We have a new public engagement coordinator, and her name is Megan Bruner. This person will be developing the Caltrans Public Engagement Best Practices document, maintaining a stakeholder database, and helping with the Caltrans Engagement Portal, which helps identify how Caltrans engages with stakeholders throughout the life of a project. Our Climate Adaptation Planning Branch is hiring a hydrologist who will focus on sea level rise, and we also have a full-time transit planner starting in the district on April 2nd. The fiscal year 24-25 Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program cycle closed on January 8th. We in the district received a total of 7 applications, and to give you an idea of how competitive the program is this cycle, 7 of those 7, 2 were from applicants in Mendocino County. One MCOG partnering with Mendocino County DOT on a sea level rise transportation infrastructure impact study, and the City of Ukiah East Perkins and East Gobi Streets multimodal transportation plan. An announcement on those will be sometime around May or June of this year. A few Clean California updates. The Covelo Downtown project is awaiting a winter break to remove 3 of the 9 speed tables and extend the remaining tables to the edge of pavement to deter people from driving around them. Additional pavement warnings will also be added for advanced notice. The Anderson Valley School District received notice to proceed for their local grant to improve athletic fields, new track, and other improvements. That will wrap up in June 2026. The Laytonville Dump Day vouchers served 129 vehicles, averaging 6.7 cubic yards of vehicles, which is exceptionally high. Our average district-wide was 3.5 cubic yards. So this included 118 appliances for recycling. And the Casper Dump Day served 285 vehicles and collected 74 mattresses for recycling. The SPP crew cleaning up litter based in Ukiah had their last day of work on February 29th, and the work of these crews will be ending as part of the Clean California Sunset on June 30th of this year. And last, the Clean California Community Days will occur in April this year. We are providing support to community groups doing cleanup in the form of promotion, litter pickup kits, and supplies are limited, so we encourage you to sign up early. The website will be ready soon, or you can reach out to Brenda Rose or Julia Peterson. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions?
And you have the milestone report there in the information packet.
Do we have an update from MTA?
This is Jacob, just looking forward to scoring the unmet needs.
Great Road Trail.
Yeah, we had a great Redwood Trail meeting on January 25th, and there was certainly, it was in Healdsburg, there was certainly a lot of discussion there, and people from tribal nations who were feeling like they needed to have more representation in the process. And so it was a good discussion about how to get that representation and make sure that all voices were heard, and dealing with sacred lands and areas of delicate areas throughout the corridor of the Great Redwood Trail. And so we also had one of the concerns was the MOU with the Willits area and the stretch that's going to be built out from Commercial Street down to East Hill. And so we had to have a special meeting to deal with that, and that was passed. So anyway, we have the new general manager, Elaine Hogan, and we're hoping to have the master plan available to the public in the near future. That's it.
Okay, thanks. We have MCOG staff summary meetings, and then we're on to MCOG administrative staff.
Yes, and I did attend the road charge TAC meeting on March 1st, which was pending there. Covered that online. Anything else on the meetings? Are we moving ahead now? Okay. All right, so I have a verbal report on that new 2024-25 budget. The executive committee met on February 29th, 2024, and our members are here and can comment if you like. This is the first step of annual budget development with the local transportation funds, like we call it LTF, from the countywide quarter-cent transportation sales tax. It's been on the decline. It's been going down over the past 2 years following the budget surpluses that we saw during the COVID pandemic. And the acting county auditor is keeping a close watch on the revenues. A fund estimate was provided for 2024-25, and that was with no increase over the revised estimate that we just talked about a few minutes ago. While we did not have any new information in time for this first draft budget, it's possible there could be a revised estimate in time for our Transit Productivity Committee to review in April. And if a revised estimate shows any revenue gains, there could be an increased amount available for Mendocino Transit Authority's claim. So, the county auditor did say she would like to report in quarterly, and we just didn't have enough information for her to give us a really firm estimate. We're going on the estimate that we have, though. So for this early draft, staff presented 2 options. This is our very first draft budget right now, and you'll get that in the next packet. You'll see the minutes and all of that, and then it comes to our May budget workshop after that. So for this early draft, we presented 2 options. First, with the minimum 5% LTF reserve, and that's according to our MCOG's own policy. And the second with a 10% reserve fund balance. And we just assumed that the 15% that we've reserved over the past several years would take too much away from transit needs for current year operating costs, and we didn't discuss that. So we might come back to that in future budget development, but we only looked at, in this executive committee meeting, the 5% and the 10% set aside for the reserve. And that reserve benefits MTA. It's to address budget shortfalls and certain, unusual needs that, or cost spikes in costs, for instance, that might come up, but just for existing services. So the other unknowns are amounts for the staffing contracts for administrative and fiscal services and planning services, which are undergoing a procurement process this spring budget season. And for this draft, an estimate was provided for administration. The planning contract is reflected in the draft overall work program, and that is subject to amendment also. So the recommendation that came out of the committee was unanimous and recommended approval of staff's recommended reserve option 2 of the LTF reserve at 10% for further development during the annual budget process. And so the committee, with MTA management present with us, agreed that it was wise to set aside more than the minimum amount for reserve. So I'll float some numbers by you, and you'll see these in print later on. But just to go through the recommendation in this budget, the LTF reserve balance of $424,000 is double the minimum allowed by policy, and that will require new LTF revenue from the new year's revenue coming in. We'll need $247,368 to reach that 10% reserve balance. For administration, we have a placeholder pending MCOG's request for proposals for these staffing contracts. We have a number of $554,900, and that includes our usual other direct costs that are not in the contract. Things like, audits and board travel and a lot of things like that. We call them direct costs. So that's a combination of the contracts and costs. Bike and pedestrian, the committee wanted to keep that 2% in the coming year for $73,770. And the planning program request for new LTF funds is $127,300, and that's 3%. That's the target, 3% of the estimate. So the balance available for transit at the end of all that, in order of allocation priorities, is $3,240,044. So there are other things in the budget besides the LTF, but that is the key thing we have to look at first. I had to get a notice out on March 1st of the area apportionment. That went out. And so that's kind of the first priority in this development. The other things, allocations from other sources for the Transportation Planning Overall Work Program are recommended by staff and the Technical Advisory Committee. So that's, you hear also from this other committee on all of those funding sources. And then there are allocations from the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, and that runs to $1 million a year now, which is going up. And finally, I'll mention there is a brand new source of funds for transit that came in 2023-24 from Senate Bill 125, and that's now being added to our budget summary. And this created the formula-based Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. That's the TIRCP. That was an existing program, but that was a competitive program. Now they've added a formula-based, we're all going to get a piece of that. And also the Zero Emission Transit Capital Program. So those two things together, those will pass through MCOG's cash accounts. The council adopted the first allocation plan. You may remember back in December that was put before you. And we do have a plan now for that. For the first $5.3 million of an estimated $11 million over a 4-year cycle that we will receive. Of that amount, $110,636 goes to MCOG administration, and the rest goes to 3 interrelated MTA transit projects. So the proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget includes $27,659 of that. That's 1/4 of it for administration in the new year we're planning here. So you'll get the minutes of that meeting in your next board packet with a summary of that as usual. And now I'm wishing I had printed out a copy of that summary table where the budget's running about 15 million from all sources. So that's my report on that. Any questions or remarks from committee or anything else? That's a lot of numbers to verbally read out to you, but you will be seeing that. The next thing that happens is the transit committee meets in April, and we'll see those numbers, and we'll see if there's any news on that. And then, of course, on the staffing procurement, you'll be taking action on in June. So it's a little tight. There's a lot of moving parts this year. We expect to have a May budget workshop here in these, in this meeting with this board, and in June it'll be presented for adoption of the latest, greatest version of that. That's all I have.
No questions, but I do have a comment.
Sure.
I do appreciate the sort of 60,000-mile overview.
Right.
It's hard to take it all in, like you say, in this format, but it definitely helps when we get to the packet to have had sort of the ground laid, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Director Connie. And, some funds are going down and others are going up. So it's not all bad news here. We've got resources. So. Okay. Thank you for the time there.
Well, if I can comment.
Sure.
Is that one of the things that, we're dealing with is loss of income, revenue.
Yeah.
And that one of the ways that you noted was, decreasing the percent that is in reserves.
Mm-hmm.
And reserves is usually for that rainy day, and
Right.
it seems
It's been raining. So.
It's been raining, and it'll probably rain next year too.
Yeah.
And so this was a sustainable plan of taking it down to 10%. Next year, we'll have to see what happens too.
Yeah.
It could go down to 5%, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a sustainable path.
Yeah. We were having surpluses every year. Auditor tries to make a conservative estimate, and we hopefully come out a little ahead and have some surplus, and that gets rolled into a new budget after it's audited, but that's not what's been happening. We've been using that reserve and covering those shortfalls, and now we have to actually add funds to the reserve, so that's a new thing. Okay.
It looks like we might have a public comment on this item.
All right.
Thanks for asking. Sat in some of these meetings and they would go right over public comment and I would just be sitting there. So I had spoken with some of the folks here and about the money and where it's coming from, and I identified recently some grants, but one of the big grants that I'd like us to pay attention to is the Cummins diesel mitigation grant, 1.6 million, I believe. Might even be a little bit more, might be with a B, not sure. But it's going to be set up just like the Volkswagen funds. After VW put in the trick chip, they ended up having to, spend direct money on public transit in order to reduce the amount of carbon that was put into the air because of the trick chip that they put in the Volkswagen. Well, Cummins just got, the Cummins diesel company just got reprimanded by our government recently for having a trick chip, and we're expecting a lot more money to come down the pipeline through this mitigated against them. I've lost the word. I'm looking for. But anyway, so I just wanted to, put that out there, that there may be a lot of money that is directly earmarked towards public transit. And thanks for being in the pond as the little fish, because they might be talking about that. So the little fish can check all the boxes for the money, and we can get that money, because I think that our county checks a lot of the boxes that they're looking to give the money to. Thanks for.
Yes, and General Manager Jacob King of MTA may be able to speak to that. I believe we've had some benefit of the VW settlement funds for our transit agency here.
We have.
Okay, that's confirmed. Thank you.
Right. If there are no further comments or questions on that, I can move on to the next report. Okay. So the next report is an update on the California Transportation Commission Town Hall meeting. So I believe we reported previously that MCOG will be hosting a town hall meeting of the CTC in Fort Bragg, April 17th and 18th, which is a Wednesday and Thursday. It's a really great opportunity. They do 2 of these per year typically, and in all different parts of the state, but typically parts of the state that don't host regular CTC meetings. So it's a chance for a region to highlight projects as well as needs and concerns within their region and have conversations with the CTC. They are not regular business meetings, so it is all informational and discussion about what's going on here in terms of transportation in Mendocino County. So that will start at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, April 17th. And so we'll have an afternoon meeting, and then we'll have a tour of transportation-related sites on the coast. Unfortunately, we won't be able to tour the entire county because we are limited to about 3.5 hours for that tour, but we will squeeze in as much as we can. There will also be a reception for commissioners following the meeting on Wednesday. So we hope that all of our MCOG members will be able to attend. We are, I think we'll be agendizing it as a special MCOG meeting just to make sure our Brown Act bases are covered, but that's our plan. We also are extending, we want to make sure that the invitation is extended to local agencies and partner agencies as well. We plan to have a lot of involvement from Caltrans, and we've also sent a save the date to for each of the city councils and board of supervisors and tribal councils in the region. We've sent a save the date to the council or board clerk, to the administrator of the organization, and to the chair of the council or board. So we figured that might be the best way to do it, and then each of and it's also how it's been handled for past town hall meetings. And then each of the councils or boards can discuss internally who will be attending, and make sure there are no Brown Act issues with each of those organizations. We'll be covering a lot of different issues, and even though the tour will only be coastal areas, the meeting on the first day we will be talking about things all over Mendocino County. So we hope that you will mark that on your calendar and discuss with your board or council who else might be attending as well. Yes.
Are you asking us to reserve both of those days or just that first day?
So I think if you can only attend one, the first day would be best, because that will be when we're discussing things countywide. You are invited and more than welcome to participate in the tour on the second day as well, but certainly, as the Willits area representative, might not be as much of interest because it will be focused to coastal things on that day.
and the feeling?
Yes.
So since we can't tour the whole county,
Mhm.
you know, James Sookney showed me a drone image or video of the Covelo project. So are we, well, I think it would be good if we showed them that footage. It's only a few minutes long, but it certainly is impressive and shows what their work is doing.
Yes, we will be using that. We actually presented that last week at the National Center for Rural Road Safety. We presented it at a webinar that was focused on projects in or near tribal areas, and it was really well received, and it will be presented also, unfortunately not by us because it is at the exact same time as this CTC meeting, but it will be presented by county staff on our behalf at I think it's the National Association of County Engineers in April. So it is getting a little bit of attention, but we will definitely be presenting that and talking about that at the CTC meeting. They have approved funding for that project multiple times, so I think they'll be happy to hear that their approvals are being implemented and being used. So.
Right.
Yes, that will be discussed. Just some other things that we plan to talk about, Great Redwood Trail segments in both Ukiah and Willits to be implemented. I think we'll talk a little about post-bypass Willits, the Ukiah downtown streetscape. We'll be talking about the successes and challenges of implementing zero-emission infrastructure in a rural area for both passenger cars as well as zero-emission transit. We'll be talking about the county's roundabout project at North State Street, Brook Trail's second access, Redemeyer Road extension, the tribal projects, the Blues Beach land, I don't know what the title exactly is, but the land transfer at Blues Beach, the Mill Street local partnership program funded project in Point Arena. So all kinds of things. Those are just a few. So we hope to see you all there, but please do mark your calendar at least for that April 17th day, if possible. More to come. So it was just a save the date that went out. You all should have received it, but more detail and a full agenda will be coming out closer to the event.
So they'll be taking public comment there?
Yeah, it's a little, because so this is, it's a CTC meeting, and what CTC staff has proposed is that rather than public comment on each item, it might be one block of public comment each day, but that's kind of up in the air still. But yes, there will be public comment, and it's a public meeting open to the public.
So if people had comments about, second access routes, then there would be a time for them to make those comments?
Yes. All right, that's my update on that. Are there any questions? No? Okay.
Oh, I had forgotten about this reminder of the Form 700 Statements of Economic Interest, but you probably already filed yours annually. But just to reiterate, MCOG is not the place of filing, so if you provide us a copy, it's a courtesy copy. And the one thing you need to do is just list MCOG as one of the committees or assignments that you have on your same form that you file for your elected office. And those are due April 1st.
I don't have any miscellaneous items.
I don't either.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground today, so can't think of anything else right now. We note the next regular meeting date is May 6th. But, you know, we've been trying to decide if this town hall in April is a special meeting. Most likely it is. So it's not on our board calendar as a regular meeting. So we hope to see you then. But after that, we'll have our May 6th meeting and do a budget workshop and whatever else needs doing.
Okay. Yes, I think we're ready for planning reports, unless there are any questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just have a few reports. First of all, under grant information updates, 2 quick updates. MCOG staff worked with county DOT staff to submit a Caltrans Climate Adaptation Grant. This is the one that Tasha mentioned during her report. It's for a project called Mendocino County Sea Level Rise Roadway Impact Study. We submitted that by the January 18th deadline, and the purpose of that project will be to study and propose solutions for at-risk coastal roads, both county roads, Fort Bragg and Point Rita roads, that are vulnerable to sea level rise encroachment. So the grant awards are expected this summer. The total project is $400,000, roughly $354,000 grant with a $46,000 local match. And then secondly, under grant information updates, I had reported some time ago that MCOG staff worked with the Potter Valley Family Resource Center to submit a CARB grant. It was called a STEP, Sustainable Transportation Equity Project, and that was to hopefully fund some micro-transit services in Potter Valley to implement one of the recommendations that came out of our rural mobility study. Unfortunately, we learned recently that the grant wasn't funded, so we had a debrief call with CARB staff, and we learned that it was very competitive. However, they only funded 5 out of 17 projects. We were invited to the second round, so we were hopeful. They encouraged us to apply again, but they're not yet sure when they'll have more CARB funding for another cycle in that program. And then, any questions on those 2 miscellaneous? If not, I'll go ahead and go on, unless you stop me. Under Work Element 3, fiscal year 23-24 work program project, this was for the feasibility study for MTA's Ukiah Transit Center. I haven't reported, it's a little bit old news, but I hadn't reported to you yet since we didn't meet in January, February. But at the December MTA meeting, the Ukiah City Manager and Deputy City Manager came to the MTA board meeting and gave a presentation to the MTA board making their case as to why the study should also include a review of a site on Perkins Street at the rail depot location. It was pretty late in the process that site had not been analyzed, and at that point the preferred site was the site north of Coles. So after discussion, the MTA board agreed to support having the consultant to analyze that one additional site, and so we extended the contract a few months. The consultant did their analysis, and then at last week's meeting on February 28th at the MTA board, the consultant presented the draft final study, which the MTA board accepted, and the study, they did not adopt any specific site. They accepted the study, but the results in the study, separated by just a small margin in the points, was Coles was the first highly rated site, followed by the Perkins Rail Depot site, and 30, the Mason site. So the consultant basically said the scores were close, any of the sites could possibly work, and the board accepted that report, and then they directed MTA staff to work with City of Ukiah staff to form a technical committee, which we will have MCOG on that committee and other partners too, when they get closer to when the MTA board gets to the point of selecting a site. That committee will research further details and make a recommendation. Any questions on that? And then, so that project's about wrapping up. The next one is a work program project, work element 9 in the current work program. the Noyo Harbor Multimodal Circulation Plan. We had received a Caltrans grant for this project several months ago. We had a kickoff meeting with Caltrans in late January. I have a draft RFP ready to go out, pending some direction from Caltrans on disadvantaged business enterprise DBE requirements that we need to include because it's federal funds. So we're hoping that can get submitted soon, and we will leave it out for 4 weeks once it does go out. Just one side note about that. City of Fort Bragg staff has expressed interest in combining the community outreach effort for this project in the Noyo Harbor because they have a separate planning project that's getting ready to start in the Noyo Harbor on their Blue Economy Visioning Plan. So if schedules align, it would be great to combine the outreach process for that. So we're coordinating with city staff on that. And then my final report is on Work Element 10 in the current year's work program. This is a project, a grant-funded project to update and expand the local agencies' local road safety plans. So currently, the county and the 4 cities have these plans, but they need to be expanded and updated to qualify the local agencies to apply for federal funding through the federal Safe Streets for All grant program. So that project is in process. There's a little bit of concern about the timeline because last time these SS4A grants were due was in July, and we just received the notice in the last week or so that this cycle they're going to be due in May. So we've got the consultant doing what they can to meet that deadline. We don't know if they will, but this program is year 3 of a 5-year federal program. So if we don't meet the deadline this time around, there are 2 more cycles that local agencies can apply for. And I'm going to be attending a webinar with the federal program. And we're just going to ask the question that if the plans are in progress, if we can go ahead and submit the applications, but we don't know the answer to that yet. But I'd be happy to answer any questions on those reports, those projects. Okay, thank you.
Is there public comment?
Yes, it looks like we might have public comment.
So, I'm Gizmo, everybody, and I really appreciate the fact that we're hiring a company, or maybe not even appreciate that fact, but I'm really glad that we're moving towards this public transit mall. My public comment is I'd like to see more interest as far as when we're looking at this space, also for a large evacuation plan or how it's going to affect us as far as fire goes. It's probably not a good idea to put a bunch of buses and people all in one place in the center of a town that seems to be, or city of Ukiah, that seems to be one of the most fire-prone cities, you know, on the West Coast until we can mitigate that. So I would like to propose, and a little late in the game again, that the board and anyone in the future also look at places outside of the cities. And my suggestion would be to look at the Masonite site because it has already had truck access for a long time. There's a cloverleaf right there. It was originally the plan to move a public transit mall to the old bowling alley. It's the halfway point between Eureka and San Francisco. A lot of folks stopped there. And what has happened now is that we have a blighted end of the north end of town. We have very little walking traffic. The truck stops only open part of the day. Carl's Jr. is closed. Big Daddy's has nothing going on. The rails to trails are right there. There's just a lot of open space that I would consider the tombstone of industries that we have to kind of look at a lot, and it's just seen a lot. And I would like the board to just take a moment to remember that it's for Mendocino County, not just for the county of Fort Bragg or for the county of Ukiah or for the city of Ukiah or the city of Fort Bragg, that this should be considered a county public transit mall, meaning that there should be other sites also looked at. And I would just like to say that I think we could fix the North State Street off-ramp and on-ramp, repurpose the old railroad spurs that are next to the Masonite site, create more foot traffic at the north end of town, utilize the Ford Road underpass as a new off-ramp, and then just create a new on-ramp where the off-ramp is now, which is a little confusing. But I think we could provide a safe and easy way for the rail trail to access our public transit, save the stand of 4 redwood trees that are right there at the Masonite site. As far as the redwood trail, there's no redwoods on it till you get to there, so we can really, like, that would be really cool if we could, like, create that circle. We might be able to repurpose the holding ponds from Masonite and put solar panels over them to charge the electric buses. And create a safety zone and a meeting place for loved ones after and during a natural disaster, all without enlarging the 101 State Street overpass, and at the same time providing a long-term economic viability to businesses that will be squeezed out after the loss of fossil fuels, such as maybe factory pipe might not be making exhaust pipes for vehicles that are not, you know, moving gas anymore. So that's my comment on that, and thank you, board. And if you could please take time to look at the old Masonite site as a possible space for a public transit mall. I don't know if that's public comment.
Well, this was a comment on an agenda item, so there is discussion allowed on this.
Well, I have a question. What is the process for making the decision about the transit hub? When we get the report, who is going to actually make that decision?
So, I mean, ultimately, this will be a project implemented by MTA. You know, they are the transit authority. It will be their transit center, and so they will be making the ultimate decision. Of course, that decision won't, you know, it'll be made with, I think, a lot of involvement from partners, including City of Ukiah, yeah, probably Offices of Emergency Service. Probably lots of organizations would be involved in that. And like Loretta mentioned, the MTA board, in accepting the feasibility study, they did call for a working group of MTA city staff, and MCOG will be part of that as well. So, but at the end of the day, it'll be an MTA project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does that take us to MCOG director reports?
So quiet.
Does it take us to MCOG director reports?
Yes, we are on MCOG director reports.
Okay, do we have any reports?
There's lots of heads shaking here in the chambers.
Okay, all right. And I don't know, do we have any updates from CalCog?
Yeah, well, the CalCog annual meeting was February 7th through the 9th, and I went with, there was some staff there too. Janet presented, you know, what we talked about earlier about the difficulties that small counties have in applying for grants, and all sorts of issues that we have as a small rural counties. And so it was very well received, I think. And I think a lot of people heard the message. And so thank you for presenting that.
Sure. I was on a panel of speakers talking about zero emission vehicle infrastructure. There's a lot of money coming down the pike, federal money and state money, investing in those things. And so the problem isn't money anymore. The difficulty is grabbing onto some of that. And they wanted to hear from us what kind of constraints we're up against. And we've had some experience with that. So I talked about that, and also the effort with the North State Super Region. About 3 years ago, I started this working group, ZEV working group, and that's been meeting for the past couple of years. And so that's how come I know anything about these other rural counties. And there's 16 rural counties in the north, so we talk to each other a lot, and I was able to convey a lot of that information and what we're trying to do up here. So, you know, Sacramento doesn't always hear that much from us, but they are more now increasingly. We're kind of raising our voice.
Well, there are federal people there too who are hearing the message.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we actually had a representative there speaking right before us, right before my panel, on from the newly formed federal office, Joint Office of Transportation and Energy. So that came from the Inflation Reduction Act, you know, so that's a new thing, address climate action. So we had someone there, and we also had a commissioner from the Air Resources Board, Patty Monahan, who's kind of their point person on zero emission issues. So that was great to be able to, you know, have FaceTime with those people and really be seen and heard. So that was good. Yeah.
And one of the other issues that was in the forefront of the conference, which has been in the forefront for a while, is the, you know, loss of gas tax revenue because of the number of electric vehicles on the road. And so how's the state going to deal with that loss of revenue, because it's going to be in the billions of dollars before we know it, with the number of electric vehicles. And so kind of like looking at road charges or miles, you know. Anyway, there's proposals out there, but it seems like the political will is not there yet to really tackle it. So we'll see what happens, but something does need to happen, because, and you know, there's I appreciated their recognition that between the rural and urban centers, there's a big discrepancy if you use just miles traveled, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you use a road charge. You know, it's like, how do you make it equitable for people, low income people versus the wealthier people? You know, so there is that equity issue being talked about at that level of CalCog. So rural versus urban, and also, you know, disadvantaged economically versus the well-to-do. So we'll see how it all plays out, but it's an interesting problem, and it's going to have to be dealt with.
That's true, yeah. So the Transportation Commission has been working on that for some years now and had several phases of pilot projects, and I listened to that TAC meeting last week, and they were looking at commercial vehicles that day and studies that they're getting data from. They had presentations on that. But yeah, it's a step-by-step process. It's actually, there are a lot of states working on it too, not just California. So it's a big transition now. But it looks pretty inevitable that gas revenues are not going to be the way to fund our transportation projects in the future. So. And not exclusively.
Okay, well, thanks for the update, and it looks like we may be ready for adjournment at 3:29.
All right, thanks everyone.
Okay, good to see you all.